So I want you to just take a second and imagine a world where a massive maritime traffic jam in the Middle East, a really disappointing U.S. jobs report, a 14-gigawatt AI power grid, and get this, a tainted head of lettuce are all inextricably linked.
I mean, it sounds like the chaotic plot of some, dystopian novel.
Yeah.
But it's actually just the reality of the global system we are living in right now.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're looking at the source for today's deep dive, which is the August 10th edition of the Daily Tech Reader for 2026, at first glance, it feels like this scattershot list of totally unrelated disasters and breakthroughs.
Right. Just a bunch of random headlines.
Exactly. But there is this hidden architecture connecting all of them. So the mission for today is to cut through that information overload. We're going to map out the geopolitics, the tech landscape, and, our physical environment to show you how the world is currently operating under this overarching theme of compounding risk. So let's unpack this.
And we're not just going to read the news at you. We really want to explore why these specific events matter to your career, to your wallet, and just your daily life. Because when you look closely, absolutely none of these things are happening in isolation. Every single thread pulls on another.
Let's start with the geopolitical bottleneck, because that is sending the most immediate ripples through everything else. We are looking at a 5-month conflict between the U.S. and Iran in the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, 5 months.
And right now, there is no final agreement. It's just a complete stalemate. Iran is demanding compensation for military damage. They want sanctions relief, frozen assets released, and an end to attacks against them and their allies.
Right. And Washington's counterposition is equally dug in. The U.S. is essentially saying, sure, we'll lift our blockade of Iranian ports, but only after commercial shipping can move through the Strait of Hormuz without any impediment whatsoever.
Which makes sense from a trade perspective.
It does. Now, Iran claims they are nearing this maritime agreement with Oman to establish new shipping lanes, but they are deliberately tying the actual implementation of that agreement to those American concessions.
Which brings us to a really alarming leadership shakeup. Iran just appointed Mohsen Rezai as the secretary of its Supreme National Security Council.
Yeah, it's a huge shift.
And the Supreme Leader also appointed him as his direct representative to the council. He's replacing Mohammed Baker Zulqadar, who I think only had the job since March, right?
Exactly, a very short tenure. And from looking at the sources, Rezai is not some new blood diplomat.
No, not at all.
Far from it. I mean, Rezai commanded the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps for over 15 years, from 1981 all the way through 1997.
Wow.
Yeah, and he later served as vice president for economic affairs. And, no official explanation was provided for this sudden change. But when you bring a hardened, former, longtime military commander to the negotiating table during a critical period,
it sends a message.
It sends a very specific, intimidating signal. It suggests a much harder, uncompromising negotiating position moving forward.
And meanwhile, the physical attacks on the water are actively escalating. I mean, Houthi forces just claimed responsibility for hitting Saudi Aramco's Jazan refinery.
Right.
And the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, ADNOC, is reporting that 15 of their vessels have been attacked in the Strait since this conflict started. 15.
Which is forcing the instability to widen, right? Regional governments are scrambling to respond to this. Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan have actually pledged mutual defense.
Which is a pretty big deal.
It is. Now, Turkey stated the agreement is purely defensive and not directed at any particular country. But the alignment itself is telling. And regarding the U.S. response, President Trump stated that the United States is reducing the conflict's profile while emphasizing economic pressure on Iran.
So they're trying to play it cool militarily while turning the screws financially.
Strategically, the administration is trying to thread a needle here. They want to reopen the global trade routes, but do it without granting Tehran permanent control over the vessels entering the Gulf.
It's essentially this massive global traffic jam where the toll booth operators are heavily armed.
That's one way to put it, yeah.
But here's the piece I'm having a really hard time wrapping my head around. About a fifth of global oil normally passes through Hormuz. You have 15 ships attacked, a major refinery gets hit. But Brent crude is hovering comfortably in the low 80s per barrel, and West Texas Intermediate is in the high 70s.
Yep, completely stable.
I am looking at a literal war zone in a major shipping lane, yet global markets are just shrugging it off. Are investors just in complete denial here, or is there a data point I am missing?
It's a fascinating disconnect. To understand why Wall Street isn't in a cold sweat right now, we really have to look at the broader economic picture in the United States, which is incredibly counterintuitive at the moment.
Okay, how so?
Well, by all traditional logic, markets should be panicking because the U.S. unexpectedly lost 23,000 jobs in July.
Right, which is bad.
And it gets worse. Downward revisions just erased another 103,000 jobs from May and June's data.
So hiring isn't just slowing down,
Right.
it's actively shrinking.
Yes, exactly. But, and here's the weird part, the unemployment rate is oddly holding steady at 4.1%.
How does that even work mathematically?
Because of lower labor force participation, people are just, dropping out of the workforce entirely. So you have a shrinking job market, you have massive geopolitical risk in the Middle East, and yet investors have this tentative optimism. Global stocks actually advanced modestly.
Okay, what is the shield? What is masking all of that underlying economic anxiety?
Corporate earnings. I mean, nearly 90% of S&P 500 companies have reported their results, and they are producing approximately 30% annual earnings growth.
30%?
Yes. The earnings are so disproportionately strong that they are completely masking the weakness in hiring and the geopolitical uncertainty. J.P. Morgan even raised its year-end S&P 500 target to 8,000.
Wait, 30% annual earnings growth while actively shedding jobs? That means these companies are doing significantly more with way less.
Lots of size.
And that cash isn't just sitting in bank accounts. It is funding an absolute arms race in the physical world. Let's look at what the tech giants are actually buying, because this is where the story gets really wild.
Yeah, this is the pivot.
The biggest trend this Monday morning is a relentless pivot toward vertical integration for artificial intelligence.
The scale of capital being deployed here is staggering. Tech companies aren't just buying software startups anymore, right? They are redirecting massive budgets to own the entire physical foundation of AI.
Exactly. Look at Meta. They are planning to produce a custom AI chip in September.
Which is huge.
But that's just the tip of the iceberg. They are working toward a computing capacity of 14 gigawatts next year.
Just to put that in perspective for you, 14 gigawatts is an incomprehensible amount of electricity. It's the kind of power you use to run entire nations, not just a server farm.
It's massive. And then you have NVIDIA reportedly planning to invest as much as $3 billion in a data center developer called Lancium.
$3 billion just into the real estate and power side of things.
Exactly. And Samsung just introduced a prototype memory architecture specifically designed for AI workloads. They're using what is called wafer bonding.
Wafer bonding, which sounds incredibly complex, but how does that actually work in practice?
Think of it like building a digital skyscraper. Traditionally, memory might be spread out on a chip, kind of like a sprawling suburban neighborhood. But for AI, data needs to travel instantly.
Right, latency is a killer.
Exactly. So with weighted bonding, they are literally gluing microscopic floors of memory directly on top of each other. We're talking more than 400 layers high.
Yeah. It cuts down the physical distance the data has to travel, which saves precious microseconds and, more importantly, massive amounts of power.
It honestly reminds me of the 19th century railroad barons. Modern tech giants aren't just building the digital trains anymore. They're buying the steel mills to make the tracks, they're buying the land the tracks sit on, and they're buying the coal mines to power the engines.
That is a perfect analogy.
I mean, NVIDIA investing directly in a data center developer like Lancium proves they realize they need the electricity just as much as they need the silicon. They want to own the entire supply chain.
They absolutely do. But as they build these massive vertically integrated empires, they are slamming headfirst into national borders. The technology is borderless, but the infrastructure and the regulations are extremely local.
Right.
For instance, Apple just published instructions allowing eligible Mac users in mainland China to connect Alibaba's Qwen service to Siri and their writing tools.
Because they need a locally approved AI partner to operate inside China's regulatory system? Right.
Precisely. Regional, account, and software requirements strictly dictate who gets to use what. It proves that a globally ubiquitous device, like a Mac, is becoming heavily dependent on local, national partnerships just to function. And interestingly, Alibaba is reportedly planning to charge major commercial users for their next open-weight Qwen model.
Let's clarify open weight for a second, just so everyone's on the same page. It basically means giving developers access to the core architecture of the AI. It's like giving someone a high-performance engine for free.
Right.
But if you want to use it at a massive commercial scale, Alibaba is saying you have to pay us for the specialized fuel and maintenance. It preserves broad access for researchers while monetizing the massive computing power required for big business.
Exactly. And, the regulatory walls aren't just international. Domestically, the landscape is shifting really fast. The Senate is advancing legislation for the first comprehensive federal regulatory framework for cryptocurrencies.
Although lawmakers are still actively divided over consumer protection and rules for digital asset custody, right?
Yeah, it's far from settled. But the real tension, the thing keeping tech executives awake at night, is the balance between innovation and safety in AI. Look at OpenAI. They have actually paused portions of their highly anticipated Project Astra.
Wait, really? Why?
They are investigating whether an upcoming model possesses critical offensive cybersecurity capabilities.
That is a major inflection point. They're worried the model couldn't just identify a security flaw, but could actively conduct a sophisticated attack itself.
Exactly. And it demonstrates a huge shift in how AI is tested. You can't just ask a frontier model a question and assess its conversational response anymore.
Right, a conversational test is like asking a bank robber if they know how to rob a bank. They can just say no.
That's spot on. You have to put the model in a sandbox with actual tools and see what it attempts to do. Developers have to determine if access controls and monitoring can sufficiently reduce the risk before they ever deploy it to the public.
And while OpenAI is hitting the pause button for safety, Google is completely shuffling its AI leadership. Demis Hassabis is moving away from his principal managerial role, and veteran engineer Jeff Dean, along with several Gemini leaders, are departing.
Right. Google is desperately trying to preserve its research continuity while somehow turning these massive investments into reliable consumer products.
It is a very delicate, high-stakes balance. I mean, over 1,100 technology employees have actually signed a letter calling for an American-backed international effort to manage advanced model risks.
Yes. They are arguing that voluntary safety commitments are just not enough to provide consistent protection across all these competing developers.
Meanwhile, President Trump stated that congressional proposals could regulate the American AI industry out of business. So you have this immense, multi-directional tug-of-war between technical capability, organizational control, and sustainable economics.
It's pulling the industry in 3 different directions at once.
So we have these tech giants pouring billions into building the most advanced, power-hungry, vertically integrated virtual brains in human history. But all of this infrastructure, the 14-gigawatt computing footprint, the massive data centers, the cooling systems, they exist in the physical world.
They do?
And according to this news brief, the physical world is currently fighting back hard.
It really is. The environmental data in this brief paints a picture of a planet under severe stress, and it is actively threatening that exact new infrastructure we just talked about.
Let's run through the reality check. We've got severe thunderstorms and heavy rain battering the Midwest and lower Great Lakes, shifting into the Ohio Valley.
Yeah.
Dangerous heat is threatening the plains, with some locations baking at over 100 degrees, but the really alarming mechanism is happening in the ocean. Scientists are monitoring an unusually strong El Niño developing in the tropical Pacific.
Which is concerning. Projections indicate ocean temperatures could rise more than 2 degrees Celsius above the seasonal average.
Which alters global weather patterns entirely.
Completely. A powerful El Niño of that magnitude could bring increased flooding risk to California, as well as Florida and the Gulf Coast. Heavy storms mixed with higher sea levels mean severe coastal flooding and erosion. And, while it might temporarily ease drought in some areas, it drastically increases landslide and infrastructure risks in others.
And these weather extremes are becoming hyper-localized and incredibly intense. Like, Phoenix just got hit by 2 haboob dust storms in the past week.
Yeah, habooms are no joke.
And these weren't just a bit of blowing sand, right? They both reached the highest category on a severity scale developed by Arizona State University researchers.
The mechanism of a haboob is fascinating, but so destructive. You have intense thunderstorm downdrafts, basically a column of rapidly sinking air hitting dry, drought-stricken soil.
Okay.
It pushes out this massive rolling wall of dust that completely plummets visibility to zero and just coats infrastructure. Plus, on top of that, satellites are trapping severe wildfire activity and smoke across the western U.S. and Canada, with August fire potential staying well above normal.
This is exactly what the scientific community in the brief identifies as compounding risks.
Exactly. It is never just one isolated event. Drought, Exposed land and intense storms combine to make those dust events way more severe. Extreme heat drives up baseline electricity demand because everyone cranks their air conditioning.
Naturally.
Combine that heat with aging power grids and the massive new electricity demands of those AI data centers we mentioned, and the entire system strains to the breaking point. Climate patterns, local soil conditions, and tech infrastructure vulnerabilities are all just crashing into each other.
And it isn't just our climate and our power grids that are vulnerable, it's our physical bodies. The physical risks are compounding in public health, too. I mean, the U.S. is experiencing its highest annual measles total in decades, mostly among the unvaccinated. And then there's the lettuce.
Yes,
Yeah.
the multi-state cyclosporiasis outbreak.
Yes, patients in at least 15 states have been affected, and it's actually linked to 2 deaths.
Right. Cyclosporiasis is caused by a microscopic parasite. It typically contaminates the water used to irrigate or wash produce, like lettuce, and you can't just easily wash it off in your kitchen sink.
It's terrifying.
It causes prolonged diarrhea, fatigue, and severe dehydration. Investigators are currently scouring purchasing records, just trying to find a shared grower or processor.
I have to push back on this whole scenario, though, because it kind of blows my mind. We are building the most advanced AI data centers in human history. We're creating neural networks that can write complex software and pass the bar exam, but we can't quickly figure out who grew a toxic head of lettuce. Are we prioritizing virtual progress while completely ignoring our physical fragility?
That is the essential paradox of this news brief, and really, I think, of this era. We are highly advanced in the digital realm, but incredibly vulnerable in the physical one. Heavy rain in the Midwest creates contaminated drinking water and interrupts access to medication. Heat across the plains endangers outdoor workers and agriculture. Wildfire smoke remains a persistent respiratory risk.
The basics, essentially.
Exactly. The fundamentals of human health, vaccination, food tracing, hydration, clean air, these are still our primary hurdles, no matter how smart our computers get.
Though it is interesting to see how the global health economy is shifting in response to this. The brief mentions Thermo Fisher expects its Indian customer base to grow between 15 and 20%.
That's a massive jump.
India's biopharmaceutical research and manufacturing sectors are booming, so they desperately need more laboratory instruments and diagnostics. It shows how physical health needs are actively redrawing the map of economic power.
Which brings us to the most practical application of all this information.
Right. If you are listening to this on your commute or, while you're making breakfast, what does this all actually mean for you? We have talked about geopolitics, billion-dollar AI investments, extreme weather. How does this actually affect your daily life and your career?
Let's start with the labor market. The data we discussed earlier, the job losses, the downward revisions, suggests businesses are trying to run leaner. But if you look beneath those headline numbers, careers are morphing in real time to solve these exact crises we've been talking about.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's take Meta's proposed 14-gigawatt computing footprint. Building that doesn't just take software developers. It requires mechanical engineers, industrial electricians, massive construction crews, and utility planners.
Right, people who work in the physical world.
Yes. NVIDIA's investment in Lancium highlights a massive growing need for professionals who can actually connect bleeding-edge computing projects with the dependable physical power grids.
And if AI models are getting smart enough to potentially conduct sophisticated cyber attacks, the demand for cybersecurity workers is going to absolutely skyrocket. We need people to defend against systems that can accelerate vulnerability analysis. Or, look at Apple integrating Qwen in China. They need product engineers who also deeply understand regional compliance and language.
There's a profound takeaway here from a World Bank report that was included in the sources. They estimate that AI could expose about 4.5% of jobs in lower and middle-income countries to direct displacement.
It's just a scary number.
It is. But they also note that AI could massively accelerate development in emerging economies if they can close the physical gaps in electricity, connectivity, and foundational skills. The brief explicitly states what the new durable career advantage is going to be moving forward.
Converting new technology into reliable operations.
Exactly. Being the person who can take these wild, unpredictable frontier technologies and actually make them satisfy strict business, safety, and regulatory requirements. Autonomous AI agents still need restricted credentials, continuous logging, and human approval before they take irreversible actions.
Right. You need a human in the loop.
The most valuable human element in the workforce right now is the ability to maintain organizational control and sustainable economics amid all this chaos.
And we are seeing that human element fighting back in the culture, too. The physical world is making it harder to just escape and relax. Summer travel is under immense pressure from the heat in the plains, the thunderstorms in the Midwest, and the wildfire smoke out west.
Not to mention global travel.
Exactly. Okinawa is recovering from a typhoon. European destinations are trying to balance peak season tourism with literal wildfire evacuations, and airlines are dealing with higher fuel and insurance costs directly downstream of the disrupted shipping in the Strait of Hormuz.
Everything connects, and our cultural institutions are also feeling the strain of polarization. Museums, like the Smithsonian, are currently central to a wider argument over political influence, specifically regarding how publicly funded exhibitions of national history should be reviewed and presented.
But I think the most fascinating cultural battleground in this brief is retail versus AI. Retailers are waking up to a terrifying reality. AI recommendation systems like ChatGPT and Gemini are becoming the new black boxes for how we discover products, restaurants, and entertainment.
It is a massive tectonic shift in consumer behavior. Think about how you search for things now. Retailers desperately want greater visibility inside those conversational AI systems. They want to be the specific product the AI recommends to you when you ask for a new jacket or a coffee maker.
Makes sense. That's where the eyeballs are.
But they are terrified of surrendering their customer relationships and the behavioral data that traditionally supported their direct online sales. They want the algorithm to suggest them, but they're terrified of losing their distinct brand identities to a generic chat interface.
It's a fight for visibility in a system they literally can't control. But amid all this algorithmic anxiety, all this compounding physical risk and geopolitical tension, there is this beautiful, very human countertrend in the source material.
Oh yeah, the live events data.
Right. Film studios are still relying on massive, shared event-scale releases to get people physically into theaters. Streaming platforms are heavily leaning on live, real-time events. Baseball's divisional races are heating up as we get deeper into August, drawing massive crowds. And women's professional sports continue to gain staggering audiences, new sponsorships, and broadcast access.
It highlights a really vital point about human nature. Monday's culture reflects the continuing, enduring value of shared physical experiences. Within an increasingly fragmented, heavily regulated, and algorithmic media environment, people are intensely craving actual physical collective moments.
Okay, we need to bring this all together. We started this deep dive by asking how a geopolitical crisis in the Strait of Hormuz, an AI power grab by Meta and NVIDIA, a massive haboob in Phoenix, and a tainted head of lettuce are connected.
And the unifying theory is compounding risk.
Yes. We are living in a global system where tech companies are trying to vertically integrate a digital future, but they are completely, unavoidably reliant on a physical world that is currently defined by fragile supply chains, extreme weather, and unpredictable human conflicts.
And as we navigate this massive transition, I want to leave you with a thought regarding that struggle we mentioned between retailers and AI recommendation systems.
Okay, lay it on us.
Think about how you make choices on a daily basis. If systems like ChatGPT and Gemini truly become our only gateways for discovering what to buy, where to eat, and what to watch, what happens to human choice?
Oh, wow.
If a single optimized algorithm decides what is put in front of you, does brand identity just die completely? It makes you wonder, in a few years, as these 14-gigawatt AI systems come online and completely filter our reality, will a human-curated experience or an entirely algorithm-free lifestyle become the ultimate luxury status symbol?
That is a deeply fascinating question to leave on. Will raw, unoptimized human choice be the new luxury? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep questioning the systems around you, and we will see you next time.